Hi all, welcome back to the weekly current affairs post. So this is the forwarding post for the governance and polity current affairs which I've released, and let's see what were the important economic aspects of the news that made in the economy part of the news in the week that went by, that is from February 12th to February 18th. So let's see what's important in the economic part, which is very important from your GS paper 3, that is economic growth and development and other aspects as well. Also, if we really see that the examination with regard to essay type is very generalized, so these points will definitely help you to build on your essay as well with regard to economic growth and economy and the economy part of the preparation on a whole. So the first important thing is some very good news coming from the RBI. It says in its February bulletin that the India is decoupling from the 2023 global slowdown. Now this bulletin of the RBI gives very good growth prospects to the economy of India and is an attractive statement for investments and also for the foreign investors to come to India. It says that due to good domestic consumption, the economy is decoupling, and it says that supply response cost conditions will improve. It also says some good news for inflation. Now the decoupling, it also says, as being driven by the budget growth prospects and growth potential. Now in India, the domestic consumption and investment would especially benefit from these strong prospects. So it says that, as I said, it said that India will decouple from the rest of the world, and this is being supported by the union budget, which will not only raise the growth prospects for India but also its potential growth as well. Turning to the immediate growth prospects, the union budget has won appreciation, let me tell you, from all the quarters on several counts. Besides also the promises kept on consolidation and capital expenditure, the tax changes that have been introduced in the budget will at least put 35,000 crore in the hands of the households and will increase the consumption. So the implications of these three aspects for the outlook on growth, it said, will be on three ways. So first, it will lead to saving of taxes, which will boost the spending on the households on consumption. It will increase demand. Second, the increase in the allocation for capital expenditure works out to be rupees 3.2 trillion for 2023 and 24, that's the coming year, and this increased capital spending will generate an additional output of 10.3 trillion during 2023 and 27. Third, it says that fiscal consolidation can free up the productive resources for the private sector, and also it will contribute to lowering the cost of capital. That means more investments. The article says that putting all these together and taking the economic survey's growth projection of 6.5 at the base and the union budget's tax and capex and also the fiscal consolidation proposals, this can take India's real GDP growth close to 7% in 2023 and 24. That's the coming year if implemented effectively. And so this is some really good news coming from the monthly bulletin, and that too from the top bank of the country, that's the RBI. It's only going to be a boon for the companies who come to invest and also for foreign investors as well, and also the basic sentiment on India's growth. The second most important is that RBI has now issued the draft norms for borrowing and lending of government securities, or GSECs. So usually, to tell you simply what is GSECs, is nothing but we usually as individuals save our money in banks in the form of your current account and your saving account, and also sometimes in the form of fixed deposits. Very similar to how banks give interest on fixed deposits and use that money to lend to others, government uses the GSECs to the money garnered through the sale of government securities to run the country. Now GSECs is a collective term that is used for two types of securities: maturity less than 1 year, which is called as T-bills, and those that are more than 1 year, which are called as bonds. So the GSECs, or the government securities or government bonds, are instruments that the government uses to borrow money. Government usually keeps running into deficits mostly, that is where the revenue is less than expenditure, and therefore it needs to resort to borrowing. So they spend more than they earn via taxes, and that is why they borrow money from the people, and one way is through the GSECs. So the GSECs, or the government securities, carry the lowest form of investment because it's the government who's borrowing from the individuals and the markets, and after all, the chances of the government not repaying back the money is very, very less, so the investment risk is very less in G6, and they are the most sought after form of investment, and also the safest form of investment one can make. The other ways in which the G6 are very different are in the manner in which they are structured and how effective the interest rates are also calculated. Now, the RBI's motive is to improve the participation in the G6 so that the government can garner more money through the sale of the government securities. It also aims to widen the ambit of those who can participate in the borrowing and lending of the G6. Now, RBI has issued draft norms for borrowing and lending of the government securities, and this is done to improve liquidity and price discovery. So G6 are taken to be a safe option, and because the government will not default on it. So RBI guidelines coming for government securities at a very timely point. And the next important current affairs is that government places the reverse charging of scrap before the GST Council. So we all know that the 49th GST Council meeting is being held and is underway, and today it took a decision of accepting the report of the group of ministers chaired by the Haryana Deputy Chief Minister Chautala regarding the GST Tribunal. And now in this news, it's that government places the reverse charging of scrap before the GST Council. So this is actually to do away with the fraudulent way in which the input tax credit claims is made by the scrap dealers. So the scrap steel industry, which sources its raw materials mostly from the unorganized scrap dealers, has sought rationalization in the GST structure through a reverse charge mechanism, where the liability to pay the tax would be actually on the manufacturers. Now, a body called as the All India Induction Furnaces Association, a body of the scrap steel manufacturers, urged the GST Council to consider their demands to bring the steel scraps recycling industry under something called as the reverse charge mechanism in line with the transport industry. Under the GST system, generally the supplier of the goods and services is liable to pay the tax. Reverse charge means that the liability to pay the tax will be on the recipient of the supply of goods or services. So a large number of scrap dealers have been found guilty of claiming the fraudulent input tax credit, and tax authorities are ultimately catching the manufacturers. For this reason, the reverse charge mechanism would actually help solve the fraudulent input tax credit claims by the scrap dealers. And GST, let me tell you, is levied at a rate of 18% on the steel scrap. So something regarding the woes of the steel scrap industry, and a very body that is representing this, called as the All India Induction Furnace Association, to deal with the fraudulent claiming of input tax credit by the scrap dealers. The another most important current affair that may in economy part is that the government cuts its windfall tax on crude oil and aviation turbine fuel, or ATF. Now the government has reduced the windfall tax, profit tax levied on domestically produced crude oil as well as the export of diesel and ATF in line with softening of the international crude oil prices. So what exactly is windfall tax? A windfall tax is a higher tax rate levied by the governments against certain industries when economic conditions allow these industries to experience above average profit. So when any industry, and in this case it's the oil and gas, benefits from an event or an external situation like we see in the Russia-Ukraine war that they were not responsible for, and really make sudden profits because of such situation, these profits are taxed separately over and above the normal taxes that these companies pay to the governments. So this is called as the windfall tax. And the government is now reducing this on the crude oil and the ATF. So why has the government actually imposed this tax? Now the levies come as refiners made gains by boosting the fuel exports to countries that were facing a deficit, like Europe, which has now boycotted the oil imports from Russia. Now government wants to keep a check on the constant supply of crude oil in the domestic market, and since many refiners prefer to export the crude oil instead of selling them within the country, the government has mandated the oil exporters to fulfill the Indian domestic demand first, and has levied windfall taxes on the exports to indirectly make exporting oil to these countries in Europe by the Indian oil and marketing firms more expensive. So that is the reason why the government has actually imposed the windfall profit tax on them. So is it India only who does this, or are there any other countries who do this as well? India is just not alone in imposing this tax. Let me tell you, the cess is imposed on crude oil. The cess that is being imposed on crude oil is also being levied by many countries lately in response to the elevated crude prices. Now in United Kingdom in May, they announced a windfall tax on energy companies that have been pocketing extraordinary profits, and Italy and Romania also were first of the few countries to tax the power generators, while United States and European Union also levied such a tax on war-fueled profits of major energy firms. Earlier this month, the United Nations Secretary General has said that one way to fund energy solutions and chart a course to move away from fossil fuel was to impose windfall taxes on large oil and gas companies and then divert this money to green energy and transition goals. So this is all about the windfall tax that is being reduced and how India is not alone in this endeavor. The next most important current affairs is about HAL, our very own PSU, is now going to provide MRO facilities for the MQ-9B drone engines from the US. Now the state-run aerospace behemoth, that is the Hindustan Aeronautic Limited, which functions in Bangalore, will provide maintenance, support and services for engines of American MQ-9B remote piloted aircraft system or drones, considered to be one of the most sophisticated armed drones globally. So India is now going to use them as well. Now HAL will provide maintenance, repair and overall services for the operations of these drones in India. This will not only make it very easy for India to use these drones, but also will lessen the expenditure of availing these MRO facilities in US. Now the announcement of the project comes at a time when India is in talks with US to procure more 30 MQ-9B drones at a cost of USD 3 billion. Primarily, this is to actually increase its surveillance apparatus along the frontier with China as well as the Indian Ocean region. Now, we are in need of more drones, let me tell you. So, the drones at the Indo-Pak border is now become one of the major challenges for the Indian Defence Forces as well. HAL and the US defense major General Atomics Aeronautical System, the manufacturer of these drones, announced the collaboration on MRO services for drones on the sidelines of the Aero India 2003 at Yelahanka Air Base that was happening in Bangalore. Now in 2020, the Indian Navy has taken on lease 2 drones, that is the MQ-9B drones, Sea Guardian drones from General Atomics for a period of 1 year for surveillance in the Indian Ocean, and this lease period now has been subsequently extended. Bangalore will be providing the MRO support to the engine, and which is one of the sophisticated equipment in the world, and now we are going to use it in the border areas as well as Indian oceans. So this joint collaboration echoes, what does it actually mean? Now it means Atmanirbhar or self-reliance in MRO facilities, and also the capability and ability to provide MRO facilities for other countries and other equipments as well. While underscoring the deep industrial connection between US and the Indian aerospace companies, the defense minister said that the MRO facility that is going to be provided by HAL is only an India's clarion call for Atmanirbhar or self-reliance in the defense industry, which is now being extended to MRO, that is maintenance, repair and overall, which is a very, very important part of using equipment from other countries as well. So the drone is the first hunter-killed unmanned aerial vehicle designed for long endurance and high altitude surveillance, and it's only going to boost India's capability on the Indochina, Indo-Pak border as well as the Indian Ocean. The next most important news is coming from the farm and the dairy sector, that is cabinet nod for 2 lakh farm and dairy cooperatives. Now this is to give a boost to the farmers' ability to sell their products and also to avail credit facilities on a wider scale. So in a move to strengthen the Indian cooperatives, the union government has planned to set up 2 lakh primary agriculture cooperative societies in the dairy and the fishing cooperatives in all the uncovered villages and panchayats over the next 5 years. At present, let me tell you, there are 63,000 functional PACs PACS, that is the Primary Agriculture Cooperative Societies in the country. Now, the PACS will be set up in all the uncovered panchayats in the country, and a viable dairy cooperative in every uncovered panchayat or village, and a viable fishery cooperative in every coastal panchayat, village or panchayat or village where there are water bodies as well. For this, an action plan for implementation has been prepared by NABARD, the National Dairy Development Board, and the National Fisheries Development Board, dedicated bodies to these sectors. A plan, according to the official statement, will be implemented by converging various schemes of the government with the whole government approach. So the schemes that have been identified for convergence with regard to the development and increasing the PACS are National Program for Dairy Development, Dairy Processing and Infrastructure Fund under the Department of Animal Industry and Dairy. From the Department of while from the Department of Fisheries, it is the Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana, and Fisheries and Aquaculture Infrastructure Development Fund have also been picked up for this. So these will be converged to implement these PACS. What is the advantage now of setting up of more cooperative societies in these areas with regard to dairy and fisheries? Now, this will provide the farmers and members of these cooperatives all over the country a requisite backward and forward linkage to only market the produce to much wider areas. It will enhance their incomes, it will increase their livelihood, it will also help them to obtain credit facilities and other services at the village level as well. So this is a very, very big boon for the farmers, especially in the dairy and the fisheries sector. The next most important is, as I've discussed in a previous post, Air India and the Boeing deal has been hailed. So it does not have only local boon for the civil aviation industry, especially for Air India taken over by Tata Group, but also for geopolitics. And with this deal, countries such as France, UK and US are going to benefit from India because it's going to provide jobs for them there. So the US President Joe Biden, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and French President Emmanuel Macron have hailed the Air India, Airbus and Boeing deal worth $80 billion now. Now, the Tata-owned Air Group announced that it will buy 470 aircraft from the aviation majors Airbus and Boeing to increase its capacity both in international and domestic routes. The deal, let me tell you, is Boeing's third biggest sale in terms of order. Now, welcoming this mega deal, US President Joe Biden said that the deal will create up to 1 million jobs across 44 states in the US, not only in the US but also France and also UK. So the French President Emmanuel Macron underlined the strategic partnership between India and France and said that the Air India Airbus deal makes a new stage for cooperation and strengthening of India-France strategic relationship. The French President thanked Prime Minister for the confidence in France and French industry. British Prime Minister, on the other hand, hailed the deal by Airbus and Rolls-Royce to supply the new aircraft to Air India and as a landmark movement and also a boon for the country's aerospace sector. He said that it's only a commitment to building ties with India. He said that the deal is going to be a boost for UK's thriving aerospace sector. He said the pact will create highly skilled jobs in Wales and Derbyshire, East England, which will boost health exports and also help the economy in UK as well. So this is about the Air India deal having not only domestic prospects but for the growth of the domestic industry civilization, but also geopolitical and also a boost to the growth in other countries such as UK, France, etc. The next most important coming from the Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, who said that procurement of defence equipment, now this is a boon for the domestic defence industry, especially Atmanirbharta in this sector. So from domestic manufacturers, the procurement of defence domestic equipment has now increased to 75% of the total expenditure in 2023 and 24. So this will mean setting aside 1 lakh crore for procurement of military platforms and equipment from local India manufacturers. So the defence outlay totally in this budget was 1,62,600 crore rupees, which was announced for the union budget this time for 2023 and 24, and 75% of it, let me tell you, is going to be a push to the domestic industry and procurement of military platforms and equipment from local India manufacturers. So a big boost to the growth for domestic industry. Also, the MOUs and the technology transfer agreement which was signed recently during the Aero India will facilitate a new beginning for domestic manufacturing in India. He said this is a move towards Atmanirbhar Bharat and added trust to the government in the local industry to ensure its growth. Aero India witnessed also signing of 2,266 partnerships, including 201 MOUs with 53 major announcements, 9 product launches, 3 technology transfers worth a whopping rupees 80,000 crore rupee. Now, according to the official data, the value of India's indigenous defense production from 2019 to 2022 is 2.58 lakh crore rupees. So there has been an increase in the percentage that the government is catering the money to domestic industry. Let's see the digits for this. So in 2020-21, the government has set aside a 58% of defense capital outlay for procurement from the Indian defense industry, and this increased to 64% in 2021 and 22. The allocation was further enhanced to 68% in 2028-23. Now, this is being inspired by Amrit Kal, that now the percentage has increased to a straightforward 75%. And the minister said that Aero India showcased to the world the new defense sector, a new India in the defense arena, and also an India that is ready to walk along the defense sectors of leading countries. So the 14th edition of Aero India was held at Yelahanka Air Force Station in the outskirts of Bangalore and was inaugurated by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. We've seen a participation of this biennial event with 700 defense firms and representatives of 100 countries. Many MOUs, technology transfer agreements were signed up. This only shows the growing faith and trust in the domestic industry. The 10th most important news is that Electronics and IT Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw launched the Digital Payments Utsav in New Delhi to promote digital payments across the country. So this is to promote digital transformation, and key initiatives were launched to increase awareness and also adopt digital payments. Now, Digital Payment Sandesh Yatra was spoken about to educate citizens about the digital payments. Top bankers, fintech companies were honored with the Digi Dhan Awards. So Digital Payments Utsav is an extraordinary campaign to showcase India's journey in digital transformation. The focus of this campaign is to promote digital payments in the country, especially when India is already conducting a G20 Digital Economic Working Group event as a part of its G20 presidency. Digi Dhan Awards have been presented to top performing bankers, fintech companies in different categories for their outstanding performance in digital payment. Now, digital payment like payment apps, Google Pay, Paytm, QR coding, etc. have many benefits. They make payment transfer very easy and also lead to formalization of the Indian economy. So government really pressing for more of digital transformation in the country, and one aspect of this is digital payments. The next most important is that Union Finance Minister has now said that the GST Council adopted a report by the group of ministers on the GST Appellate Tribunal, and certain modifications will be done. So a GM on GST Appellate Tribunal was set up in the last year, let me tell you, under Haryana Deputy Chief Minister, and the GST Council adopted the report now, and so this is the first step towards forming of a GST Appellate Tribunal with certain modifications. So the GOM was set up last year, and the panel suggested that the tribunal should consist of two judicial members and one technical member from the centre and the states, beside retired judges of the Supreme Court. This much awaited tribunal is expected to resolve matters very fast, and the establishment of this tribunal is expected to bring relief to businesses that have been waiting for very long time for quick and efficient process for resolving GST disputes. So this is something very useful for GST grievance redress mechanism, which has been an issue, especially with 5 years of completion of GST implementation in the country. A good news for agriculture front again. The Union Agriculture and Farmers Welfare Minister Narendra Singh Tomar has said that the food grain production in the country is about 3,235 tons in the agriculture year 2022 23. So the second advanced estimates have been released and food grain production have increased. So there has been a record production of rice, wheat, maize, gram, moong, rapeseed, mustard and sugarcane. So the minister said the success of this was just because of the hard work of the farmers and the policies of the government. Let me tell you that we are implementing the International Year of Millets in 2023, and Prime Minister has given the name of Shri Anna to these coarse grains and nutritious grains as well. So the budget also gave a very big boost to the agriculture sector. So there's been more credit to the agriculture sector, like almost 186 lakh crore. Agriculture Accelerator Fund has been set up to encourage the startups in agriculture sector in rural area. Atmanirbhar Bharat Horticulture Clean Plant Program is going to be launched to boost production of high valued horticulture plants in India. Now a 20 lakh crore credit for animal husbandry, dairy and fisheries sector. Additional credit, as I told you, the primary agriculture cooperative societies with regard to dairy and fisheries is going to benefit from this. Additional storage capacity to for farm produce and support to making India a global hub for millets or Shri Anna. So these were some of the highlights with regard to the agriculture sector in the budget. Very timely when we are the estimates have released that we are a boon for there's a boon production in agriculture sector with regard to the crops that I've spoken about. The next one is that the government has said that 39 crore loans have been extended under Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, and let me tell you that this scheme was introduced in 2015. So we are already completed 7 years. Now Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana is a very big boon for self-employment, as the government is focusing more on startups and more of employment creators. So this Mudra Yojana provides loans without any collateral or guarantee up to 10 lakh to non-corporate, non-farm, small and micro enterprises. Now Mudra Yojana is playing a very crucial role in boosting the employment, especially self-employment opportunities in the country. And the Prime Minister, while speaking about this, also gave examples of shops, dabas, guest houses, homestays, and loans of up to 10 lakh are being provided for businesses without any guarantee. So Mudra stands for Micro Units Development and Refinance Agency Limited. It's a financial institution that is set up by the Government of India under the Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana for development and refinance of micro unit enterprises. It aims to provide financial inclusiveness and support to the marginalized and backward and neglected classes. So under this, collateral-free loans of up to 10 lakh are extended by the member lending institutions via various commercial banks, regional rural banks, small finance banks, etc. The loans are given for income generating activities in manufacturing, trading, service, and for allied activities in agriculture. Now the Mudra loans are categorized into 3 types, that is Shishu, Kishore and Tarun, and each signifies the limit of the loan. So Shishu means loans up to 50,000, Kishore means loans from 50,000 to 5 lakh, and Tarun means loans from 5 lakh to 10 lakh. So this is about the second last important current affairs is about the forex market. The rupee appreciated 6 paise. Now the rupee, we'll have to spend 82 rupees for every dollar. So the currency is set to appreciate when a base currency becomes expensive in the currency pair with respect to the quote currency. For example, USD INR pair, where $1 is equal to 75 previously, and now $1 is equal to rupees 82. So the dollar is said to have appreciated with regard to the Indian rupee. Now depreciation of the rupee refers when there is a fall in the currency's value, and depreciation in the fall of the value of rupee against dollar, implying that the rupee will become less valuable and weaker against the dollar. For example, if $1 increases from 70 to 75, the change will be termed as depreciation in the rupee. So we'll have to spend less money to buy a dollar. On the contrary, appreciation of the currency refers to increase in the value of the currency. So hence rupee appreciation will imply strengthening of the rupee against the dollar. For example, US $1 decreases from 75 to 70, the change will be termed as appreciation of the rupee. So what happens when a rupee appreciates or depreciates? Now when a rupee depreciates, imports will become costly because we need to spend more money to buy, we need to spend more rupees in terms of dollars to buy those imports, and exports will become attractive because the exporters will earn more Indian rupees in exchange of a dollar. Remittances will become less because will become more. We'll get more Indian rupees in exchange of a dollar, and once the value of rupee depreciates, the foreign investors also try to pull out of the stocks. Then when the rupee appreciates, imports will become cheaper, exporters will learn less. So this is about the appreciation of the Indian rupee. So the next most important is that the RBI decision to hike the rate was hailed by many in the market. So this is the 6th time that repo rate has been hiked by Reserve Bank of India since last 2022. So repo rate is the rate at which the central bank actually borrows to the other banks in the country, and it determines the rate of interest that we as individuals gets from the individual bank. Repo rate is used by the monetary authorities to control inflation. So when inflation is high, the central bank increases the repo rate, and this acts as a demotivation for the banks to borrow from the central bank. Repo rate and the reverse repo rate are parts of the liquidity adjustment facility, and they help in reducing and increasing of inflation. So this is the 6th time that RBI has raised the repo rate, and other policy instruments of the RBI which deals with monetary policy are the repo rate, reverse repo rate, marginal standing facility, bank rate, cash reserve ratio, statutory liquidity ratio. So I hope the economy roundup for the week from February 12th for 18th was helpful to you all. This will help you to only build on your basics and strengthen your and keep track of the current affairs if you have ever missed it out in this week. And I shall see you in my next post, and until then, as usual, it's happy learning.